This is a clip from the Cannon podcast. To hear the full episode and get access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.
To any status or goes, Arsenal have a very clear plan apparently. Full signings is what they want to make. They've already got 3 potentially in the works. Havertz is done, Timber advance, Rice, whatever happens there. But full signings is the mark they're going for. And if we can get the Havertz, Rice, Timber done, then in terms of the fourth signing, lads, who do you guys have in mind? Positions-wise, is it a midfielder, is it a forward, a defender? We'll go to George first. In terms of that first centre-back, fourth signing, who are you going for?
Freudian slip. Do you want a centre-back, Bhavs? Listen, I think in terms of that last signing, when you look at trying to make Havertz and Odegaard work in the midfield, for me, requires another defensive 6'8". Like, if we're going to speak honestly about my feelings about how we try to facilitate this long term, and it's not just having a Yuri and Timber option inverted, like, I think we need another 6'8". And look, we can't talk about what that signing could be without a Thomas Partey size departure that is very heavily rumored. I mean, it's not just a passing rumor. And I worry, guys, I'll be honest with you, when I look at Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey both leaving, I do worry. Like, for me, that I think we underrate how successful that pivot was in the Premier League. It rarely lost. It was one of the most consistent pivots in world football, not just the Premier League, but in world football. That record was incredible. Do I think then that we should never move on? No. Like, I think it's exciting that we're willing to do such a radical change. But again, after that point, if you do remove a Thomas Partey, you definitely need a 6'8" in the squad to replace that. Now, who could that be? You talk of your primary options of your Caicedo, and then you go down the list in a Lavia. There's others. I have options in terms of, Eamon Kari is a really youngster kind of prospect that I love. But for me, to replace Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka, and I'll be frank, with prospects, even with Romeo Lavia, who, by the way, I believe is an excellent prospect, and I think has a very high ceiling, I think makes Arsenal weaker. I really struggle to see how kind of a Kai Havertz and a Romeo Lavia analog makes us better in the short term than a Xhaka and a Thomas Partey. And I worry about the experience of that. I worry about the experience with Europe, by the way, the strain on the squad that might do, and relying on youth options that we found towards the end of last season needed a little bit of experience to get us over the line. And so, ironically, one of the biggest issues with Arsenal over the last couple decades, in my opinion, has actually been the experienced squad option stepping up. I don't think they have. And I'm not just talking about last season. I'm talking about probably the last 10 years. I think you could argue that Arsenal's youth has been the one that has stepped up on the greater part than the experience has. But for me, to make that jump from Xhaka Partey to a Lavia, an Eamon Kari, insert your favorite 6'8" profile, Florentino Luis from Benfica, ridiculous release clause, but a player I love as well. There are players that I think we could target, but if I'm being quite honest, I think that if you are willing to let go of a Partey and a Xhaka, I, as a fan, would be demanding something a lot more sturdy and experienced. And yeah, that would be a Caicedo. And then a lot of the basic questions come, George, how are you affording a Caicedo-esque purchase after all 3 of those signings? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know. And that's when the real question comes in, does Thomas Partey leaving make sense? And so, to basically get off the fence, what would it be? If Thomas Partey were to leave, it's very clear 6'8" is needed. And I think, in fact, even if Thomas Partey stays, I still would lean into another 6'8" being purchased over, say, an attacker or a left-footed right-wing option, because I don't see the market, by the way, there that I would love. Even though I think that Saka needs a little bit of break, I think Havertz is going to offer that versatility, and he's going to give us that versatility. So that gap isn't as huge for me. But fundamentally, I think I need another 6'8" to come into the squad. I'm just not in love with the idea of that being a prospect, no matter how talented that prospect could be. That doesn't mean that I don't like Lavia. I like him a lot. I just think that if you're removing 2 pillars of a team, you need to replace them with 2 pillars and not just 1 pillar, no matter how great Declan Rice is. It's a lot to replace Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey, not just into the dressing room, but also on the pitch. So I would almost want to demand a bigger option. But is that feasible?
Caicedo then, yeah?
Yeah, well, Caicedo, yeah, it has to be. Look, I'll be frank. I won't beat around the bush. It has to be, for me, if you're willing to move on in that sense, and you're also willing to move on, by the way, Charlie Patino is rumored to leave, and you're getting rid of clearing some of these midfield depth areas, you cannot expect to beat Manchester City by going younger, and even younger than what we did. Now, it may work out in the long term, and I have no admitting that Romeo Lavia will probably be an excellent pivot with, Declan Rice in 3 years. No problem admitting that. But is the goal to win now? Like, is next year a goal to beat Manchester City? And that's the question that you guys have to ask yourselves, really. And Xhaka Partey was one of the best pivots in the league. Let's not get away from that fact. So if you're beating that pivot, is that with the current version of Romeo Lavia and Declan Rice? I'm personally not sure.
Mm-hmm. Alex, give me your name. Who's the player you want as the fourth signing?
I don't know if I have a name. I think George speaks a lot of sense. Let's go through the groups. Goalkeeper wise,
give me a profile then.
Goalkeeper wise, I think there could possibly be a space for a kind of Scott Carson-y type player. I wonder whether there's a space for that. I don't know. It's not. I'm not saying let's sign Scott. Well, yeah, exactly. Get Ryan Reynolds in. I'm not saying that's a priority at all. I'm just saying I wonder if that's a little space in the squad. Is Cole Hine there or thereabouts? I don't know. That's a subjective thing, but I wonder if we're looking at the real finishing touches on the squad. I then think in defence, if we don't lose Kieran Tierney and we do lose Holding, we bring in Timber. I think we're okay. I think we have enough. I think that's basically two teams. You could put out two defences that work really well. I think, and so I think I'm happy with that as a group. In the forward group, I'm always keen to get something else. I found the whole Mudryk thing interesting. We went so hard in for a kind of superstar-y type winger with, to come in on the left-hand side, and then we didn't get him, and we got Trossard, who is a good player, but he's more of a false nine. He's more of a combination player. He's not a winger as such. I would say he's someone who can play there, and he's done very well for us. But that's not the profile that we were aiming for. That was something that we went for elsewhere. So maybe maybe we'll go back in for Mudryk. So there's something on the left-hand side. Maybe I'm again on the right-hand side. I think possibly, and you're always thinking about City. You're going like, yes, okay, it's good, it's really good, but what if that one injury? If City get an injury, they're fine. They're literally fine. So they, I look at Saka and look at the right-hand side, and I think is they're left-sided, Rafinha or someone like that. If we play Jesus there, is that enough? I don't know. I'm always interested in another option in terms of centre-forward, Rafinha. In terms of centre-forward, is there a different option there? Maybe there. And then in midfield, I echo a lot of what George said. I think if we move on Xhaka and Partey, have we genuinely improved if we get Rice and Lavia? Probably in 3 years, yeah. But right now, I don't know. And I'm also looking at the sort of creative 8 role. In the best version of things, we've got Fabio Vieira, we've got Emile Smith-Rowe, we've got Martin Odegaard, we've got Ethan Ranieri coming through. We're absolutely cooking. In the depressed Arsenal fan version of that, Martin Odegaard gets an injury, Smith-Rowe's not up to it, Vieira's still not adapted, and Ranieri's left. So I think there might be something we can do. I'm not saying James Maddison, but someone in that mould of a kind of a real goal threat from those areas, even on a loan, maybe as an option. Something in those areas I don't think is completely a crazy idea. Someone who could play both sides as a more creative type.
Do you think that's still okay with like a Kai? Do you think with like a Kai Havertz that you're thinking on top of him as well to have another creative option, or is this in place of Kai Havertz falling through?
I think if Xhaka and Partey left, I would be looking at that on top of Havertz as well, yeah. But then I'd be also looking at a 6-8. I'm talking, and I think this is probably, mate, I think it's probably overkill. But look who we're competing with. Like, we could probably get through the season not having an extra creative 8. But the question is not can we get through the season, it's can we have a surplus and be, almost bursting at the seams with talent. That's an area I think something there. And finally, 6-8, and that would probably be the position that I'd go for. Someone who is a little bit more defensively minded, a little bit more solid. Especially if we lose Thomas Partey, Declan Rice injury, we're back at El Neni. So I'm or Jorginho. So look, and again, we always think, well, it's too much, but we have to transition out of that. It's not a small club mentality, but look at Real Madrid's midfield. Look at their midfield. They don't worry about who's gonna get minutes. They don't. They just think, well, we want that player. he's the next best player in the sport, let's go and get him. And we can't simultaneously sit here on our little soapboxes and say, oh, but we're going to block the pathway of this player, or that's a little bit too much, or how did that person get minutes, and then also expect to beat them in the Champions League semi-final. We can't have both. So, I think we have to start being like, okay, if we're losing Thomas Partey, let's get Rice and Caicedo. I'm not saying necessarily those two, but we have to get something, in my opinion. So if I had to choose something in the midfield area, but it would depend on outgoings, and I'll say Caicedo because it's easy.
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To get full episodes and access to exclusive benefits, head over to patreon.com/thecannonpod and sign up for just £3 a month.